YouTube. Anyway, a lot of fun. So where are you based out of now? We're in China? In Beijing, right?
Yeah, I am in Beijing right now.
Got it. And then how long are you going to be there again? Yeah, I'm supposed to introduce you in Shanghai, somebody in Shanghai.
I think until next weekend.
Okay. Cool. All right. It's so addicting. Once you do one live stream, you just want to do everything live stream. It's true. It is true. I'll send it to you so you can kind of see. I'm gonna start like marketing it, which is fun. So you're the regulatory. What's your official title again? Regulatory.
You're a reporter for Asia.
Asian reporter.
Yes.
The Asian for Asian reporting.
You could say that.
Yes. Are there other Asians reporting for Asia?
Yes, there are.
There are? Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So you're not the only one. You're not the token. Sorry, should we be talking about that? Okay. Yes. Cool. So, first off, you want to talk about your article?
Sure.
I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to open it up right now. That's the YouTube, by the way. That's YouTube. And we're going to take your tweet. Well, I mean, it was pretty uncontroversial, right? Oh, okay. I still want to connect with crypto firm, but reporting by. So there's just the Coindesk reports, and then their HSBC push is still when to serve crypto clients. So I would assume the HSBC is HSBC UK, right?
So I think these are American arms of the banks.
Got it. Just trying to find.
Companies aren't necessarily going overseas for banking services. They're still trying to find partners within the US. I think that's one question I've been into, which is, after these banking failures of recent, where are companies going to go?
Right. Now the thing is, what if I've noticed is looking at the statement from Silicon Valley Bank, looking at actually because we also bank with Signature Bank, they're actually not closed for business. They're actually still operating, right? They just shifted over the funds to an FDIC controlled structure, but they're still open for business. That's correct, right?
Yeah.
So then I would assume those guys are also open for business as well, right? It means that they're also taking new accounts. Now, whether crypto firms trust them or not, that's a different issue. Fair?
Well, what do you think as with a VC fund? Would you still bank with those banks?
So okay. Let's see what you did there. I would. So I would, and the only reason is because after I did call Signature Bank, and I got a response, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're open for business." And then I said, "Okay, great. Obviously, we're going to keep an account there." And they were quite responsive. And then I saw the legal entity change as well, and then I was like, "Okay," and it's FDIC regulated. I think the way I think about it, as long as it's under the 250K, this is the US, right? Not the UK, which is 8,000 pounds. As long as it's under 250K, and they seem to still have linkages and off ramps and on ramps to crypto, I would keep it. Right, I would definitely keep that relationship. And then the thing is with these big banks, I think they're slowly getting interested in working with crypto, but looking at those names, right? Santander, HSBC, because we don't bank with them, I don't know. Until I think I will still reach out and try to open up accounts, but I am not. I know with at least kind of Signature Bank, they have the relationships with crypto. And other than the management, I think the teams are still the same, and therefore I would assume the processes are essentially the same.
So it doesn't shake your confidence.
It's shaken a little bit, but then I guess what's the next alternative? And I think until an HSBC or a Santander kind of steps up, or a BAML steps up and really says, "Hey, look, I'm really gonna commit to crypto," which traditional banking background, it's gonna take some time, right? It's gonna take some time. Also a narrative out there. I don't know if you heard about this whole operation. What's it called? Chokepoints. Have you heard about that? Right, where they're overtly trying to shut down banks that have crypto on ramp or crypto. I don't know about that. I mean, I know Signature Bank, the way they shut down Signature Bank was probably a little bit interesting, or maybe different. I think they're setting it as a systematic risk without kind of, and I think it was like an exception, right? But I can't see them. I know. I don't believe in that kind of conspiracy stuff. That's my view.
So what's the most important thing for you when it comes to banking services?
It's still dependable. I think that the processes are dependable, verifiable, and usable. So until there's an alternative, I think we got to stick to what we know. Or go to HSBC and try it, but a much smaller amount.
Yeah. So you would actually feel comfortable keeping funds where they are now rather than trying new providers or alternative providers?
I would, but just small kind of small amounts and small providers.
Okay.
Who's interviewing who, by the way?
I'm a journalist.
Yeah, I mean,
you're the expert.
I should answer your questions, questions as well. We can do that. We can play that game. Two can play that game.
No answers.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So how? Yeah. So you want to talk a little bit about your article, though, like a little bit more in depth, like, is this only in the U.S.? Have you kind of thought about what's going on in the UK, and then what are you hearing about on the Asian side? And just a preface, on the Asian side, we haven't heard that much.
Yeah, well, I think that's another thing I do. I mean, this has dominated the weekend for our US reporters, but then what's the fallout in Asia? I think that's something that I'm looking into at the moment, and I will get back on that.
That's right. I was looking into that myself.
What did you find?
Really, Jesus! Not only you're a reporter, you're a female as well. So that, like, you know how to play this.
Is it about gender?
So, it's many years of experience, basically, of teasing out information. My daughter does it as well. What we found is, I had a live stream with my friend in the US, obviously, with actually, so we found that out. It was like 30 to 50% of the portfolio were impacted. Then I had another live stream with a Japanese investor in the UK, and he was saying it's a lower percentage. And then he's a Japanese investor, so he didn't hear anything from Japan. And then I was asking around, I was on LinkedIn kind of posting all these things, but no one really, for me, I didn't notice anybody in Asia talking about this issue. And then I'm on this conference in Bangkok, talking with accelerators as well. I was moderating a panel, and there's this investor based out of Plug and Play, based out of Manila, but Plug and Play being a very kind of big platform, especially in the US as well. And they were saying that ESG in Singapore did reach out to help to plug in any type of funding gap. Now, again, they weren't specific, but they were like saying, hey, do you have startups? Like that, but it was very non-specific. But other than that, I haven't heard of any Asian governments kind of stepping up. And then in terms of startups impacted, he was like it's low digits to about, let's say, 10%. Australia was a little bit more, like 10 to 30%, but low percentages here. But I was interested in positively. I thought it was very positive. Singapore offered to do something, or at least reach out.
Yeah, it has been kind of putting restrictions on the retail investor deposit. So I see how you is actually UK for banking.
Interesting. And then, it seems like actually the effects of this have kind of essentially died down. So I was looking at it last night with a bunch of Americans. So I don't know if I told you, Lavender. I did tell you. I was part of this effort for a DAO to help, right? And so I got to work with a lot of Americans. But basically, after FDIC stepped in, we're like, okay, there's nothing much we can do. The FDIC fired the management, take over the bank, guarantee the depositors. There are talks of entities very similar to the UK, where it's bought by a pound, of taking over the elements of the bank. But it seemed like it's now a non-issue. I think yesterday the whole trading of financial stuff, so there was a bit of volatility there. But I don't think there were any other runs. I think maybe there's some rumors on First Republic, but other than that, I think it's really died down. And I thought that's good. Obviously, it's working.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen the market come back. Yeah. Very.
Yeah. Actually, it has the Hong Kong did the Hong Kong market go down, or let's see, Hong Kong Stock Exchange.
Market.
Let's take a look there. Hong Kong stock market. No, okay. Negative 2%, I think, as of yesterday. Something like that. Yeah, Hang Seng Index. Okay. Not too bad then. Not too bad. So also reach out to, I'm just again reading your article. New banking partnership for the funding collective. I think the biggest barrier, right, to Santander and HSBC, I think it's really, if I compare my experience working with the Signature Bank, there are a couple things, and it depends on where you are in the ecosystem, right? If you're an exchange, you're working with like their settlement networks. So they had the SEN, Signature Bank had the SEN, and then I think Silvergate had SEN, and Signature Bank had something else. We are a fund, or we help provide operations for the fund. It's relatively traditional, right? On ramp and off ramp, right? We're off ramping in cash, we're on ramping in cash. So for us, nothing changes. Whether it's like if we moved over to HSBC, or move to Signature, it would be roughly the same, because they would say, well, you're fine. You're a fund trading crypto, but it's like any other asset, right? It could be wines for all they know. It's a fund. So they would KYC the fund and make sure that it's a legitimate fund. And we've got all the licensing. We're a regulated hedge fund. So that's not an issue. Where I do think there are other players in the ecosystem or exchanges they may have trouble ramping off traditional banks. I think those are probably the only ones. If I think about projects, as long as they're dealing with technology, right, and they're not tokenizing, right, that I think is fine as well. Or if they're tokenizing, the tokenizing entity is not banking with those, I think it's fine. As long as like a technology project and we're saying this is a place where we have the technology, I don't see banks making a big fuss out of it. So I think the only people really impacted would probably be the exchanges.
Okay. So do you think it affects exchanges more than funds?
Yeah, it says like the message notes that banks can restrict some services for crypto firms, right? Brokerage and money market services, and the ability to wire money to third parties. I think as long as the third parties have been KYC, like if the entity names are very similar, right? You can, and there's documentation to document the relationship between the two. For example, as a fund, right? We have documentation between the fund manager entity and the fund itself. I don't see that being an issue. Traditional banks may.
Funds are of the same opinion as you?
I would think so, but we're pretty legit. We're very careful with our documentation and our AML processes. So I think so. I do think there are probably some out there, and I think they may make it or find it a lot harder. It also said traditional banks may be willing to set up banking accounts for crypto firms, but would place restrictions based on the level of crypto exposure. I think that's true. That's true. So I do think but again, we're not a huge fund, so I think we won't move the needle for a lot of those kind of. I don't think we move the needle.
Okay.
Western Alliance.
This has been very doom news, but from your perspective, you think it's really
Yeah, I'm sorry, you're fading in and out. So I think you're insinuating, is it kind of over, or is it kind of trickling down? Yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah, thankfully, I think it is. Thankfully, because I think it could have been a disaster. Again, I don't buy into the whole we're targeting specifically crypto. I think there's something else, but I don't think it's a crypto thing.
Okay.
I am talking to other people to try to triangulate against what that is. We should have another chat once I actually hear from other people. There are certain people that
reassuring to see regulators step in.
Yeah, yes and no, right? So, God damn, Lavender, you're asking really good questions. Again, you're good. You're a professional. That ancient history background at Oxford helped. I think so. So, I think it's philosophical. I think as someone that's been in Web 2.0, it's always good to see the essential kind of authority support the innovation economy. As someone, if I put on the hat on Web3, because I actually, when we were part of this SVB DAO, I did reach out to networks, including Sun and CZ's peoples, and people close to them to say, would they be willing to purchase SVB? Some of them just said, I wouldn't, because philosophically, we don't believe in central authorities and et cetera, et cetera. So from their stance, they would never kind of step in, and they should have let the kind of whole banking kind of regime fail. I think the truth is somewhere in the middle, right? Without I think, and that's what we're seeing. If you don't, full Web3 doesn't quite work because it's not like you still have to on ramp into right into and it's still off ramp. And I know there are ways to do that even without hitting the traditional banking system, but also not really. And so, at least not currently. So I think you kind of have the truth is somewhere in the middle, and I think you kind of have to have a little bit of legitimacy. And so I think that was a well done. I don't think one should be political or philosophical about it, and then one needs to be practical about it. I think the ramifications of letting it crumble would be even more catastrophic than letting it. And maybe the Web3 guys say, tear down the whole system. I don't think it's that simple. Right? It's not. That's not how a real world works, honestly.
Interesting.
You're not going to on ramp the next billion people into crypto, right? If you can tear the entire kind of system down, just doesn't work that way. That's not how the real world works.
So you actually see at least crypto funds staying with these banks rather than looking for other options?
I think they will. I think honestly, I think some of the firms that I know have been thinking about this. Maybe I'm thinking about this specifically, but they've been they're definitely like very not open, but they've already pursued multiple bank accounts just in case one fails. So I think that will only continue. And that was in order to that was kind of similar, not because they thought that one would fail. They would think that their account would get shut down by the regulators. So I definitely think it will continue because I think it's just kind of proper risk management. I think what you're finding is actually Web2 companies doing that as well, not just crypto. Everyone's just kind of doing proper kind of risk management and diversification.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna talk about your article now. I just got connected on LinkedIn. Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm talking about her recent article on crypto clients pursuing banking relationships. Right. Yeah. I guess what's, there's a theme as well. So I am in Bangkok, right? And I guess one more thing I would add, I'm in Bangkok. We're talking about so I'm speaking for alongside the US government. So encouraging startups to move to the US. So in that perspective, like we were like, oh, this is very reassuring, right? Like the US is pro business. They will support you. You're a startup. Even though Silicon Valley Bank, there was a run, the US government stepped up. So come to the US. On the other hand, right, as I said before, not that many startups were actually impacted here from Silicon Valley Bank. And there's another thread, which is, I think, I was talking to a bunch, because I'm in Southeast Asia, I was talking to a bunch of guys from Vietnam and obviously Thailand and Myanmar, and they're like, yeah, crypto is huge, right? Because traditional finance, I want to say it hasn't failed them, but it's never really served them either. And so a lot of them are in crypto. And they were saying like the crypto penetration is like 20, 30%. And so I think there was interesting threads here, which is, and I'm starting to kind of hear this as well. US, I'm starting to hear this from East Denver. People were saying, Americans were saying, American projects were saying, I want to get out of the US because I think the US is becoming less friendly to crypto. And then and whether it's true that there's, or false that there's like Chokepoint, maybe the perception is real. Maybe it's not real, but the perception is real, which is the US is not friendly. And so I think there may be the growth of crypto as as we know it for right now, the next, let's say, 2 or 3 years is maybe here in these regions, right? Like
Mm,
Africa, like Southeast Asia, like Latin, where traditional finance has failed, or maybe not even kind of been around. And a lot of people and practices have leapfrogged those, right? So everyone's a mobile. There's 50 different countries in Africa with varying currencies and devaluation, and they're rather trade, and transact in Bitcoin than their home currency, right? So maybe what we'll see in the next 5 years is that growth. This is where the growth will be in these emerging markets.
mm,
Maybe the U.S. What we'll see in the U.S. is regulations around crypto, but perhaps not necessarily growth in kind of user terms.
mm.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe, but I'm just kind of
Mm.
grasping at straws.
Yeah. I think finding reliable and easy services tends to be different for every company.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I noticed this like when I was in Europe, right? When I was in, sorry, it's not Europe. When I was living in London, it was the no longer part of Europe or part of the. What we found is I've only met out of the entire UK system, I only met one crypto focused fund or crypto focused anything.
Mm,
Um, versus everything else crypto wise was like Eastern Europe, and that always kind of like it always kind of tickled me why that is, and I think part of it, and I think a large part of it is because you have credit, you have access to venture capital in the UK. It's fairly easy to set up a company. It's easy to find angels, so it's not like they needed crypto financing. It's not like they needed facilitation of payments. Versus if you're in Eastern Europe, you don't have capital. The financial payment systems may not be as transparent, might not be as quick and cheap. So that kind of contrast between the two kind of made me think. I think crypto ultimately serves um, those type of markets. If you're looking at crypto as a financial tool, I think crypto as an innovation. Um, I think the U.S. will always kind of like the U.S. will always lead in like deep tech space, right? Like it's where big brains go and do something really interesting. But in terms of like penetration use case, um, and yeah, it's where it's badly needed um, with that means. Okay. No, Jesus, I do feel like I'm like I've been asked like I've been used. Maybe that's the wrong term. Used. I meant to ask you, and like it's a reverse psychology thing. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's nothing. It's just me, I guess. Cool. All
cool.
right.
Great.
Well, we'll talk more, but
Yeah.
yeah, let me know next time you have something. We can kind of talk through it. I love to. I like that. I can read some of your posts. I can read your articles, and then kind of hopefully give you more insights.
Yeah. No, it's great to hear from people in the industry. Yeah. See the real fallout. And I think what you said about, you still would bank where you bank, given what's happened. I think that's something that, yeah, is good to know. And yeah, I'll be following kind of future developments. So keep in touch.
Look, yeah, and let's definitely have another chat. Maybe the world will turn,
Yeah.
in a few next few days, right? So we can definitely kind of follow up.
Okay.
Cool.
Cool.
Cheers. Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye bye.